You're listening to Footscray Live.
Welcome everyone, broadcasting live from Footscray City College. You're listening to Footscray Live. My name is Marley Hawk, and with me today I have Luke,
Carter,
and Arav.
This is the Climate Show, and our special guest today is Anjali Sham. Hi Anjali, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Congratulations on your work with School Strike for Climate. Can you tell us a little bit about your role?
Yeah, sure. So School Strike for Climate is basically divided into small working groups. So my working group is government engagement. So my job and my working group's job is basically to meet with politicians, such as we've met with Richard Di Natale and other local members of parliament, and we discuss with them our strike and liaise with them for government support and their view on the matter.
Okay.
How can you get involved, and why is it important for more young people to get involved in things like this?
I think that what young people don't realise currently is that the climate change is such a big issue. So the reason I got involved is because I come from a community that is on the front lines of climate change. I grew up with my parents in India on a farm, and I watched our livelihood every day be affected by climate change as monsoon season, which was needed for our crops to flourish, started coming later and being shorter, and our main source of livelihood was being affected. And this is happening to people all around the world, but we don't recognise our privilege, and I feel like that's why young people don't get involved, whereas it's not happening to us now, but there is a climate emergency around the world, which is why it is so vital for everyone to step up.
So what was the biggest challenge you faced getting involved in the process? In the protest, sorry.
Well, I guess with a climate strike, there's so many jobs to do. Like, you have to organise gear, you have to get marshals, you have to liaise with police, and there's lots of little tasks to do. So I guess the biggest challenge that we had putting the protest together was making sure that every little task got done, and we needed someone on top of everything.
So what inspired you to get involved?
As I said, I come from a community that was on the front lines of climate change, and so I saw how the lives of my family was being affected by climate change, and I knew that this happens to people all around the world, and it's not like I said, it's not happening to us in Australia right now. Like, we're all gonna go home from this interview and have a house that's not being affected by rising sea levels or earthquakes, but it is happening around the world, and that's why I wanted to step up and do something about it.
Yeah, so like as you were saying, how young people might not get involved in Australia as much because although we have some of the highest emissions in the world, we aren't directly impacted by the effects of climate change. Do you think that also applies to how politicians seem to not really care or not really understand the impact because we are not directly affected by it?
That's definitely one factor. I also think that politicians are focusing a lot on the short term, whereas in the long term, implementing climate technology and negative emissions technology is going to cost money, but it's going to be better off not just for Australia but for the whole world.
So what would you say to those people who say that school students attending these strikes is just a waste of time?
Well, I hate how young people, we step up and we say to our government that the decisions that they make now are affecting us in the future, and that they're not the decisions that we want to see made. And when we try and take this into our control and skip school to protest, we're reduced to delinquents who would do everything to get a day off school, whereas all we want is for our politicians to take climate change seriously, and there are other ways to skip school, and the reason we organise a strike is to show our world leaders that we won't stand for inaction anymore.
Yeah, those strikes, they're hot and sweaty and they're hard work. People aren't just going there for fun. It's quite clear that there are people there standing on top of things, yelling things. It's not just, it's like a cry for help. It's not a cry for attention.
Definitely.
So what surprised you the most about the whole experience?
Well, when I went to my first climate strike meeting, I was so nervous. I was expecting everyone to have so much specialized knowledge and be so smart, and I felt like I was going to get left behind, but it really surprised me that I could have a genuine conversation with every single person there, and they were so nice, and if I didn't know something, they'd educate me on it, and they never made me feel like I didn't know what I was doing, and they were just so friendly and so down to earth.
So do you think there's been like a community kind of created from this and like a kind of young people being united over this?
Definitely. We all have our stories. We all have our places where we came from. And we all, like, there's another girl in the school strike for climate community who has the same experience as me. She grew up on a farm. And that's how we all really relate. You know, we formed a community through our experiences of climate change and just our common will to do something about it.
When you were protesting, who are you directing your protests to?
Like I said, we are directing our protest to our government and our world leaders because, like I said, the decisions that they make now are going to affect our future. And they aren't the decisions that we want to see made. And we won't stand for inaction anymore. So that's why we protest. Our recent protest drew around 200,000 people in Melbourne. That's 200,000 people who want our government to actually do something.
Yeah.
So, what surprises you the most during these strikes?
It surprised me so much, the amount of people that turned up. I think the day before the strike, we were having a discussion about how many people we expected, and the Facebook event, there had been around 20,000 people RSVPing, and we were like, oh, maybe, 50,000 people. It turned out to be around 200,000, and I remember on the actual day of the strike, before it started, we were all standing around in a circle, and we were getting live updates about the amount of people who were coming, and we were all just jumping up and down and screaming because 200,000 is massive.
Do you think, in your experience, have teachers and authority at your school supported the strikes?
Personally, at my school, I'm really happy with how teachers have responded to the climate strikes. We've been complimented on going to the climate strikes, and they've promoted it. And I have STEM teachers and everything who have helped me out, given me resources and contacts to organise the strike. But unfortunately, this isn't the case with every single school.
Do you think you're making an impact?
I really hope we're making an impact. I've definitely seen many impacts, such as, say, not with School Strike for Climate, but the Stop Adani movement is working hard to, they've led so many companies to rule out working with Adani, and I feel like School Strike is also following that. We've met with so many politicians. They've organised sit-ins on the floor of Parliament House in Canberra. They've met with Richard Di Natale, and so we're really getting our movement out there, and making an impact.
Yeah, it must take a lot of resilience to kind of organise all these strikes and get so many people on your side, and then still have politicians disregard you. And I don't know, that must be very hurtful, but it's also just amazing that you are still going and still organising and getting more and more people involved, because that's the only way to really get them to listen, is to continue doing it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. After we did our September 20th strike, which drew the huge crowd of people, I remember one politician made a remark which was, nobody would turn up if it was on a Saturday, and that was extremely hurtful to us because there were months that went into making that protest, and we promoted it, we used the media, and so many people turned up, not because they wanted to skip school, like I said, but because they want to see actual action, because it is our future that is under a threat.
Just for anyone who's just tuning in, you're listening to The Climate Show on Footscray Live, and our special guest is Anjali Sham.
So, how fearful are you for the future of our planet? What do we need to try and do at this moment?
Well, I don't want to change the whole tone of this interview, but if I'm honest, I'm extremely fearful. We see the situation getting more and more dire every single day. There's the bushfires in Sydney. As of Tuesday this week, I think Australia has the second worst air quality in the world, and this isn't normal. This is climate change. And, well, you ask what we can do to make an impact, but we all have an individual responsibility, I guess, try to stop eating meat, try to walk places, but in the end, it's the people sitting in a room in Canberra who have more power than the rest of us combined, and they're the ones who need to step up and see that what they're doing isn't enough.
So you said that you're kind of involved in talking to politicians. Have you kind of seen a bit of a shift in their reactions to these kind of meetups? And do you think there's kind of a little bit of a change coming to these kind of older, more stubborn politicians, that there might be a brighter future?
I've met all kinds of politicians. Like I've met Richard Di Natale, and he was extremely supportive. We filmed a video with him about the climate strike. He agreed to bring it up in Parliament. Adam Bant has brought it up in Parliament. But then again, there's politicians such as Bill Shorten, who we've had meetings with him, and he's just sugarcoated every one of his answers, and he's looked us in the eyes and told us that Labor's climate policy is doing enough and that 50% by 2040 or whatever they have is going to save the world. Well, it's not, and they need to see that.
Yeah, we know we need about 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely.
So, are there other people like you who are organising these strikes?
Yeah, in the school strike for Melbourne, I think we have about 100 to 200 people. Like I said, it's a really big job, and we have small working groups that aim to cover every single task. But then on a national stage, it's even bigger, and it just goes to show how many people really want to see action and are doing something about it.
So how can students like us get involved?
Well, obviously there's individual responsibility, like I said. Go vegan and stuff. But if you want to get involved in school strike itself, they have regular onboarding meetings where just watch out for their social media. They have meetings where they introduce you to the whole team, and you can join a working group and start getting involved.
So just as a final question, what's your favourite part about what you're doing?
I just love what I do, and I love the people who I do it with. It's so nice. I've met so many people through this. Like I've met you guys, and I've been on panels, and I've met scientists who have won Nobel Peace Prizes, and it just gives me a sense of hope that there's so many people in high places who actually want to do something that maybe will gain a majority one day, and the government will start to listen to us.
Well, that brings our show to an end. Thank you for joining us, Anjali.
Thank you so much for having me.
That was Anjali Sham, who is a representative for School Strike for Climate. My name is Marley Hawke, and I'd like to thank my panel,
Luke.
Carter.
And Arab.
This has been The Climate Show on Footscray Live.
You're listening to Footscray Live.